Yeah, I'd like to call this meeting to order. We'd like to recognize that this meeting is being held on the traditional territory of the Lillooet Nation. Approval of the agenda. Moved and seconded. Call the question, all in favor. Opposed, motion carried. Well, we have no closed. No Horizon report. Do we have a delegation coming in?
Yeah, Tracy Lawrenson is going to join us.
Good morning, Tracy.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent.
Okay, do we have a time limit on this or?
I should.
The floor is yours. Go for it.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me with you. I don't need a tremendous amount of the committee's time, to be candid. This was really important in this governance process that the regional district is going through around roles and responsibilities. And I must admit, this was made up as an idea sort of on a bit more on the fly in delivering the results of that survey. If you recall, that governance check-in provided that the regional district is actually doing a very good job on governance. The regional district model is complicated. And I don't have to tell any of you in the meeting that it's hard to navigate different expectations of municipal directors, electoral area directors. But what I thought might be valuable, and it's more perhaps to put this in front of you as a committee, the next stage of this governance process is meeting with the management team when the new CAO takes her seat and identifying the internal processes that might be tightened up, added, removed in order to support the board's decision-making. But recognizing that electoral area directors have a very different relationship with the organization, and not different in a bad way or otherwise, but one of the things I've recognized as working in regional district governance is that when it comes to role clarity, for example, constituents who live in electoral areas expect a lot from their EA director. And sometimes those expectations are not directly aligned with the way the governance structures are set up. And so it's really a question for you as a committee, and even for a subsequent meeting, not necessarily on the fly today, but to really take a look at how your committee structure, of this committee, how clear is your delegated authority, how effectively do you feel that matters that matter in your electoral area are being brought to and considered by the board. You're not a regional district that's broken, but I think this opportunity to make sure that if there are governance changes that go on through this process, that they are reflective of both urban and rural needs. The issue that comes up with, and it came up in the survey, if you recall, is that there are quite often more operational concerns that come from electoral areas. People bring direct concerns to you as elected officials and want your assistance in managing those, or at least stick handling them, if not resolving them. And one of the things that I think would be useful for this committee to consider as we go through this process is there clarity around how your constituents' concerns, first of all, they should be directed to staff, we know that. But if you're getting involved, is that to go to this committee? How do you have clarity around how you get to the board, for example, on issues? And one of the pieces of work that came out of the survey is the benefit for the SLRD in having some form of a policy framework around the questions that that directors ask of each other. Because if you're like many electoral area representatives that I work with, sometimes you feel like your lawn's being mowed at that table. you might bring something forward for your region. And sometimes you're sort of wondering, why is this person so commenting so much on my thing? I don't know if that's something that you're experiencing. And sometimes it may not even be your expectations. It might be your residents' expectations about why can't you get something done independently. But I think those discussions around and that policy discussion is something that I will be recommending. What are the questions that directors should ask of each other? And where should deference be given to the representative from a specific area? There obviously are reasons why, even if something's a good, I happen to live in an electoral area here in the Okanagan as well. So I know that at times there's things that the board as a whole will weigh in on because there's a higher risk factor or it interferes with other projects, even when there's funding and community support. But that framework is one that I wouldn't mind if this committee was willing, bringing that forward again when as it goes to the board, just to get a little bit of an electoral area director's perspective on that. And what I mean by a framework for decision making is, what are the questions we should be asking whether Whistler brings something forward or whether an electoral area brings something forward? What are the things that the board agrees are important questions it should be asking? And level of community support matters, for example, would be one of the criteria. It doesn't mean that we're only going to do popular things, but the board will want to be aware of whether it's an ask or initiative that's largely supported in the area it affects or not. Just using that as an example. Anyways, the purpose of connecting with you as a committee was more, I guess, in this meeting, if you feel comfortable, are there any specific governance gaps that you have seen be a topic of discussion at your committee, or any opportunities for strengthening governance that you feel would help you in your unique roles in the regional district? I'm not expecting that you have all of those answers today, and it might be that you put it on an agenda item for you as a committee to talk about. But I do think creating space for that sort of aggregated view of all of you as electoral area directors to be able to speak with your collective voice as well as your individual voice when it comes to governance structure and systems is valuable. That was a long ramble. I think this was more just a process of respect for your unique lens, and the fact that when municipal directors come to the regional district, they often have the benefit of their CAO helping them organize their asks at that table. And sometimes electoral area directors don't have that same opportunity to aggregate their asks and their reasons why policy changes might be beneficial. So it was more just an attempt to give this committee some input, or also to answer any questions you might have had about even where we have been so far on this governance review and what's worked elsewhere. So that was my preamble. I don't need to take a lot of your time unless there's topics that you feel are useful using your time today to discuss. I just more wanted to set the table for this, that there is a phase 2 on this now of actual changes being made to procedure bylaws and otherwise, that your input could be flowed into. I'm done now.
Any questions?
Well, yeah, I think what you mentioned just a couple of sentences ago is that you're right, 4 electoral area directors need to have a brainstorming session so that we get our input, because we haven't had that yet, into this whole governance process. And
you had the input into the survey, but I think the point you're making is a combined voice. Like, where do we share this?
exactly, yeah. And I guess the other one is it's the backlog that we have on bylaws and policies, and trying to, how do we get them moved up? I guess we do have a template now that was created by the previous CAO, and we got a fuel. In other words, a list of items that haven't made it yet, so somebody working on. and, and actually having a review, a more regular review of that whole template. We haven't had one for a while. So we actually sit down and review almost everyone that's on there so that we know where we're at and what can move up, what can't move up, what's new that's come into it that's being actioned. You know, the wildfire that we had, the wildfire season in area A and area B really put almost a stop to it, unfortunately.
The one,
That's how we get things done, is
Yeah.
we've built a process now, but keep moving forward with that process.
excellent, thank you.
Yeah, this is my 9th year, I guess, at EAD meetings, or we're looking at the Alps, and the structure for the committee was set up long before I got here. And I don't think we've done anything in the 8 or 9 years to sort of look at it and review it. And there have been some instances where, well, there are some things that exist today where you think it's a waste of time. I think we changed some things. We were having delegations come here and then the same delegation coming to the board, which was kind of a waste, you know, because you already heard it once, you only need to hear it once. But one thing I think we should look at is the whole issue of delegation of authority. What authority does this committee have? Because I know when Craig was here, there was something I was working on with him, and he said, well, you can't do that through EAD because that has to go to the board direct, you know. And that wasn't clear to me, and you know, I'm not saying I didn't accept it, but it would be worth looking at that again. One specific example, we have something on the agenda today for use of amenities funds, and for some reason, in the distant past, they decided that amenities funds had to be approved by the board. Even though the amenities funds, there's fairly restrictive, you know, that mine come from a power plant up in the Ferry Creek, on Ferry Creek. And in the agreement that they made, it said the money has to be spent in area D so there's no question there. That's where it has to be spent. I imagine the same thing's true for your amenities funds. So when we approve it here, it appears on the next board agenda. And I don't ever recall anybody from the board questioning us. I just don't, you know, they just get through. Now that takes time. It takes time for staff to process it and get it onto the board agenda. And then it takes a minimum of time on the agenda. That would be one example for me where this committee could have that authority delegated to it. So what I'm using that one example, but there are other things, and I think one of the things we should do is really take a look at the you know, why this committee was set up. What can it do to help move the board's agenda without taking anything away from that should be fully discussed by the board?
That's an extremely good example, and exactly really the purpose of this, of me dropping into your meeting, is that this group has insight and experience into what's worked and those areas that, as you identify, sort of wondering, why are we doing this? And there may be good reason, I don't know, but this is the time to ask those questions and to make sure that inside this weird legal framework that we all operate in, that we are challenging the way things work and trying. What I really appreciate about how you framed that, and it's extraordinarily good governance language, is that at the end of the day, committees exist to expedite the decision-making of the board as a whole. And so the more that we can delegate those things that are entirely within, and it might be an information-only update, or understanding why they have to go to the board that way. Because I think that's the other piece that we can do in these governance check-ins, is not necessarily change everything, but at least get some clarity around the fact that it's not just hardened arteries that we've ended up with this. It's not just the practice or the process, because if it's an internal bylaw and part of your procedures bylaw, and it's not serving the board and this committee, those are changes that should be made. Because as you point out, being here 9 years, things are changing a bit. We don't want to implode the whole structure, because your governance review is that your SLRD is actually doing a really good job, but identifying those areas where if this group of smart people around this table doesn't understand why we're doing something, confidence in government is also predicated on processes that seem to make sense to people insofar as possible. So that's a really good example. And I think one of the things that this committee could do is look at some of your previous items that have traveled through this committee to the board and identify other examples. Like the amenities example is a great one, but what are some other examples of things where you feel like you're having a redo at the board? So thank you for that.
Jen,
Tony captured what I wanted to say. Thank you.
okay.
I love that governance where people don't repeat what's just been said. So thank you for that. Like, that's extraordinary governance as well.
Well, I was thinking, after we had the meeting in Area B and Lillooet, there was a reference made that we were gonna spend some money on regional transit, and that was covered in the local newspaper. And I immediately got a couple questions on, hey, are we gonna have some regional, like, transit, really? And of course, I wanna say, oh, no. We're only talking about the south. We've got a bit of a divide with north and south over the mountains here, and we're kind of sometimes the poorer cousins in the north. And when we talk regional, I think we should say, if we're talking about something like sea to sky, then I think we should call it that. Because it's reasonable. I'm happy if we can get some transit established from Pemberton south to the big city. This is where the population is. We can get people, we can have our own little link, but like that misled people, and I had to do sort of some clarification around that. And it doesn't mean that we're abandoning all hope for transit in that part of the world, but really the focus when we're talking about transit at the SLRD, we're talking Pemberton South, so we could be a little more accurate in our descriptions.
Yeah.
For public perception, if nothing else. So that was one thing I thought of, and I agree, this board and our committees, I think they're working really well. I'm not surprised by the survey, because I think people really do contribute well and communicate respectfully. We have outstanding staff, and so, yeah, I don't have any, it took me quite a while. I mean, I know the first year it was like, no direct bird shows, no direct bird shows. I did all the things I thought I would be able to do as an electoral area. No. But we've changed some of those rules in the past few years, like we've made the way we can spend payment in lieu of taxes money. We've taken away a couple of restrictions that we had that didn't make any sense. We got rid of them. And so I've seen some improvements that make me able to be more effective as an area director that I feel happy about. So yeah, those are my comments.
Tony,
Yeah, I just want to say something about the relationship between directors and staff, and the difference between, or difference that I perceive between municipal directors and area directors. And I'm thinking, if you're a municipal councillor, I'm not quite sure what contact you have with your staff. Probably not that much. Things go through a council meeting to a staff, and then it's gone. And I've had conversations with municipal directors where they're wondering, why the heck am I talking to staff as much as I do? You shouldn't be doing that. They get those kinds of comments. But I'm not sure how we do the job unless we do have a closer relationship with staff. Now, do I ever get involved in things which are operational and get my knuckles wrapped? Yes, that's occurred. Angela's smiling there. I'm sure she's had to talk to me a couple of times about straying beyond what I should be doing, and I recognize that. But I think it would be a useful exercise for us as a group of four and with staff to sort of have a little session of working through that. What's acceptable, what's not? You know, what's helpful and what isn't? I'll give you an example. Ed's based up here in Pemberton. He gets a call from something at Ferry Creek. Instead of driving all the way down there to check it out, he gives me a call. He's like, would you mind going? And so I go and check something for him and then it's taken care of. Now, I think that's legitimate. I think that helps everybody. But I get questioned, why are you doing that? So that whole area of relationships, responsibility, and so on, I think it would be worth spending some time on that.
I think that's do you mind if I jump in? I apologize. I don't, it's hard for me to sort of see the dynamics of the room, but is it appropriate for me to hop in?
Sure.
Okay. So just two things. I really like the comment about precision of language, because I think language really does manage expectations. So if it's South region, you know, whatever that language is, and even talking about what language should we use when we're talking about items, because I think that's a really astute observation that the language we use can make things a whole lot easier, just on not inflaming people on certain projects. But at least if people are mad, they're mad about the right things. You know, they're mad about what we're actually doing, not a misunderstanding of how things are landing. I've made a note on the clarity of how electoral area directors interact, because you know, one of the complaints I hear in some regional districts, and I didn't hear it in SLRD, is, you know, some director is taking too much staff time. But we never actually say how much staff time you get. So what does too much look like? It's sort of a, you know, it's a subjective comment. So having that question about and I think this is probably a good, you know, thing for the new CAO when she starts as well, is how do you want us to most effectively interact? And what has been happening, what's been working on those areas, and designing some of those systems. And, you know, it may be that there are slightly different ways of working in different areas. But the one really strong message I got out of the survey from you as electoral area directors as well is a desire to be extraordinary governors. There was nobody who's just sort of said, I don't care about the rules, I'm going to do me. There was always this, how do I navigate in this complicated model with different interests and needs? And I think that workshop or a session with staff around that is, how can you support them? But also, how do we make sure that there's not more work being put on you as electoral area directors? Because in most regional districts, electoral area directors take on a much heavier workload. Some of that's your own doing, and some of that is the expectation of your communities. But how do we also make sure that we're not layering things on you when you're already busy with your policy roles as well? So finding that balance, because if you're willing to drive out and check something out, that can be super helpful, but it also takes a lot of your time. And that's time that not all of you may have with the other commitments that you've got. But so having that discussion, I think that's a really good topic. So we've got sort of three key areas. Is first of all, looking at the way the committee operates, I think is important, and what the delegated authority, having a discussion about the more operational roles and responsibilities. How do you interact with staff, and how do you work with staff? How do you help them out with your local knowledge that you have in your areas? And also that precision of language, like when we talk about things regionally, being precise about, if they're not actually regionally, you know, full regional, like an overlay, being really precise about what we're talking about in those areas. Those are three really good takeaways, just even from this brief discussion, moving on to the next stage. Any other discussion from the committee? I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Yeah, I'll get my take on this. And I really think that electoral area directors, this is a kind of a strange form of governance, I guess, electoral area directors cover huge areas. And we're individuals, obviously. I get phone calls, emails, run into people in town or wherever constantly. And I mean, those people elected me to be their representative for the issues that they see in their area. So I think that we need to be hands-on to do a proper job, in my estimation. If we were just to take these issues and take them right to the board, a lot of these we can fix or settle long before it ever gets to the board without compromising anything. I think it's very different for a municipal structure. You have the mayor, X number of councillors, have a huge staff at your disposal to do pretty much everything you need to have done. So it's definitely a different model for sure. But I look at our MLA, and I know the MLA for Area B and A, you know, the provincial folks, they're constantly out and about, talking to people, taking their issues forward, going to meetings, just being involved in the day-to-day sort of life of their community. And I think that's really, really important that we don't lose that. I think this committee needs to, if anything, be strengthened to make sure that the 4 directors have all the assistance they need to look after their constituents. So I'll leave it at that, Jen.
Just on that, municipal directors don't take any staff time for anything within municipalities, right?
I mean, you don't take any staff time?
We're not taking any staff time to come and look at something in Whistler or to come and look at.
SLRD stuff time.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally understand
Yeah.
that, yeah.
But it would be a really good a really good conversation for the municipal directors to understand how involved we should be. You know, how does Mike Richmond come and look at a problem within
The golf
Area
course
D.
in Area B.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, like, or how, I think that's part of this whole conversation is how does the municipal director effectively engage with what's going on at the regional district? We've had the conversation about should the whole board be present for public hearings rather than just getting staff minutes after the fact, you know, for us all to be present and hear directly from constituents at a public hearing. That's a really important conversation for us to have about how involved everyone should be. You know, should Area B director be at an Area D public hearing? Probably, right? Yes, it depends, but it also, you know, so there's, I think that's kind of why we're doing this work. Something that Director Demare mentioned is the fuel and how we've had this massive list. We had stacks and stacks of work on every staff member's desk, some dating back 12 years. And when CAO Helmer was here, we said, you know, some of these bylaws probably aren't even relevant anymore, and yet they're still sitting on someone's to-do list. So how do we prioritize those? And what tool, and I think this is a question for Ms. Lawrenson, what tool exists for us to understand, you know, if that list is so big and something new comes in, where does it fit? Does it go to the top of the pile because it's that much more urgent? Or does it go to the bottom of the pile because it's new? And so how do we understand when we're looking at new projects, where does it fit? And how do we prioritize it? And how often should we be reorganizing or reprioritizing the pile? And at what point do we say everything at the bottom of the pile, if it's older than 8 years, rescind and delete. We don't want to care about that anymore. Maybe we still have to, but I think that's something that it gets away from us.
Project that way.
Well, it gets away from us, right? And so then it's like, well, it's still work to be done. Is it still important? Is it still, it was obviously important at some point because someone brought it forward and said this needs to be done. So I wanted to capture that. And then I think to Director Rainbow's point, there's conversation around compensation and how much is a reasonable compensation or stipend for electoral area directors based on how many hours you're putting in. How do we attract new people to run for the board? If it's an 80-hour-a-week job, or if it's, and you're being compensated for 20 hours a week, or is the expectation that you're doing 10 hours a week and you're getting paid for 10 hours a week and the pay per hour is reasonable? And so I think that's a big piece for this board to understand. If we're asking for a higher compensation rate, we need to understand what a reasonable workload for area directors is, and that is going to vary by area. So I think it's really important, and obviously we're not going to skin this cat today, but we are going to need to understand that before we consider a higher compensation level or a reduced workload level to fit the expectation, because we want to, I think we really need to understand that before we increase everyone's stipend to $100,000 a year.
Nobody's asking that.
No, it's suggesting that, and I'm not being, I'm being.
And the thing is, like to say, oh, well, you're only gonna put in 10 hours a week, instead of 20 hours or whatever. I think this is a very fluid job.
Yeah.
You don't have a set, I work 10 hours a week or 20 hours or whatever a number is.
Mhm.
We do our job based on
Demand.
the job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So to say that, well, if you want a stipend of whatever, what we were asking for was $20,000 over the 4 years, so $5 a year, to bring that up. And I don't think that was unrealistic in any way. And what kind of rubs me the wrong way is we brought that forward, Director Raim did, last year.
Mhm.
And now all of a sudden, it's been put off till the very end of the term. So it's just kick it down the road. That kind of offends me in that respect, because back to the thing of the voting structure, there's only 4 of us voting against 7 other people when it comes down to it. No, it's true.
It's not
You-
against, though. We're
You
all
can
one.
say whatever you like. That's the fact of the matter. So I think we need to figure out in a realistic way, like to say that you work 40 hours a week or 30, one week it may be 20 hours. And then when we get these fires in emergent situations, it may be 60 or 80. So, it all balances out in the end. You're not going to make it so that this is equivalent to a full-time job. That's not what anybody's saying.
No.
So I know, I just think we need to keep all this in perspective. Vivian.
Tracy.
I saw Tracy had something. And I did too.
I think this is an important discussion, and I think it, depending on the board's will, this notion of, let's take one baby step back from remuneration into, do we have the appropriate funding model to support the electoral areas? That's the bigger question. And that could be staff time or elected official time. I think looking at how you as a group of 4 elected officials interact, what are the things you're doing, and can a staff person support you more effectively? Because some regional districts do have electoral area directors, funding a staff position to take this out, because what we don't want is elected officials masking operational costs that really should be funded. And I don't mean this unkindly, but they should be funded by regional residents like me to properly fund the services I'm getting. And it might be paying you, it might be paying a staff person to support the four of you. But I think looking at the areas where you feel as elected officials responsible is a really good first step. What are the things on those 80-hour weeks where you are spending time on that? Because do we have the appropriate staffing for you? How much time are you spending, of your own time? And then the third question is, are the expectations reasonable that the public has of you? Because some electoral area directors are over servicing, even compared to their colleagues in other electoral areas. And we keep raising this expectation of what we'll do beyond what the community is properly funding to receive. And so just aligning those expectations of the residents about what, because I moved to a rural area, and now I got to tell you, sometimes I'm annoyed that I don't get urban services, but I'm also not paying for them, and I think there is an element of reminding residents, and also providing, even through this governance opportunity, a way to fund more staffing if you as electoral area directors are willing to take that back to your ratepayers, more staff support. But I do think this remuneration does touch on governance, because with role clarity goes responsibility. And I think that, what was mentioned about sort of clarity around how things get added to the list and taken off to the list really does also relate to, for example, should it be a factor that nothing's happened in an electoral area? Let's say you haven't gotten anything done in your, is that one of the factors that might bump your one thing up a bit? In one of the regional districts I work with, that actually is one of the tests. It's not the only thing, but if all other things are relatively equal in their project matrix, the fact that, electoral area, whatever the alphabetical letter is, hasn't had anything for a while, would move it ahead of an area that has had a similar project recently. But I think to the question that was asked about, starting to create some criteria-based decision-making really does help you as electoral area directors. It also helps you if you can show your residents the questions your colleagues are going to ask you. When somebody says, I want streetlights in my area, to be able to say, here's the 7 questions my colleagues are going to ask me about this. Are you willing to pay for those? First of all, is one of them. But it starts to help you as electoral area directors create some line of sight between the questions you have to be ready to answer and your residents' expectations around what they might get. It's worked quite well in other areas. So that's I'll get a draft of that put together in this phase 2 for this committee to look at. But none of these are, it's not a yes or no kind of question. It's more of a, of a weighting. Even that sort of stay in our lane question. There's times where we get out of our lanes. If the why is strong enough. But I think that question on how do we look through that list and when do we just drop some of the old stuff? Because we know that if a list is 70 items long, we're probably not even paying the same level of attention to the top 20 because the list is just overwhelming. So doing a little bit of a, cleanup, if something hasn't moved forward in 8 years, let's be honest, it's not that important. I mean, it might be important again because now it's 8 years older. But that original ask, it's like our New Year's resolutions. If we don't do anything about them for a whole year, let's be honest, we weren't real serious about it. So figuring out what is the test, and this is something that you as a committee and you as a board can also delegate to your staff, is please give us bundles of these things, ones that just really would change the way we operate. Let's prioritize those, regardless of whether they came in 8 years ago or this month, because it shouldn't be last in, first on. But what are the ones that, that staff just really don't think would make any difference if we made any changes? And then the stuff in the middle is the ones where the decision-making as a board is best applied, is in that sort of messy middle of maybes. But I think taking a look at that list and, anytime a list gets so long that it's not being used, it's the same as not having a list at all. So cleaning that up should be a top priority. And my advice is not cleaning it up by knocking the doing off, but by prioritizing into even green, yellow, red. Green are the ones that really would have a material difference on the region. So I'm just making notes of some of these things, and I'll roll that back up. But I think the link between that meeting around how to work with staff and the expectations of time and what resources are available to you and remuneration is important, because these elected jobs from a diversity perspective, generally the rule of in most areas is we're trying not to make them full-time, because we do want a range of community members to be able to do them. We also recognize, though, that that the type of talent that the region is attracting, we do want to look at whether we're properly compensating for the time. One of the things that's really important for you as electoral area directors, though, is to, even in your own minds, track the amount of time you're spending. And what I mean by that is also defining boundaries. This is one of the things that I don't think we talk enough about with elected officials, is you're not expected to be on call. You're not 911. And starting to clarify what the expectations are. And this is a good discussion for the four of you to have with each other, because the more consistent your approaches are to this, the easier it is to align community expectations around what what an EA director should be expected to do. Like, talk about the job with each other at one of your upcoming committee meetings. How do you handle the call? Because remember, using the MLA analogy, the MLA is doing very little work. They're giving that work that they're gathering to staff. They may be out and about, but that notion of being the person that is the person spoken to is one thing. But making sure that you've got enough of a resource to do the work you're collecting is the critical thing. Because I think the real question is not, does a request from a community member go to the board? It's which staff person should you be pointing that community member to? And how do you, some of it is wayfinding as electoral area directors, is making sure that your residents know how to get what they need in a timely fashion, and then being there if that breaks down. If the service breaks down and people aren't getting timely answers from staff, and I'm not suggesting that your staff aren't doing an extraordinary job, but really as elected officials, you're in the, you should be brought in when service breaks down, not as the frontline service deliverer. But I've just made a note that these are things that we should make sure to capture in this next stage. Is there anything else? I've taken a lot of your time on this committee. Is there anything else today that you think is important?
Yeah, I've got Tony and then Sal and Nikki.
I'm just thinking of our organization as we've been having this discussion, and many years ago now, I worked with an organization. We brought somebody in to help us because we were growing, and he gave this analogy. He talked about kitchen table organizations, and it applies to anything. It applies to a school, to a business, whatever. You start off small, and when you're small, you kind of can do things around the kitchen table, make your decisions there, everything. And as you grow, there are pains involved in growing. And I reflect back to when I started with the SLRD, there were only 9 people on the board, not 11, and the staff was way smaller. Mm-hmm. And it had grown a little bit over the few years, but it used to really be a kitchen table organization. It was very small, and there weren't clearly defined roles. People were doing bits of stuff all over the place. Somebody had a desk with 4 things on their desk, 4 files that they were doing. Whereas we've grown and we've changed. And our previous CEO had something to do with that in terms of giving us some structure, and we've hired new staff. That's increased taxes. And one of the questions I'm getting now is, I'm paying more tax. What am I getting for it? Because what they can see is a larger bureaucracy in Pemberton, but they don't necessarily see better performance on the ground. So that's something we should recognize, that we have grown over the last 8 to 10 years. We are continuing to grow as population increases, and we need to be mindful of that and whatever sort of changes we make, we need to be able to answer, the four of us, need to be able to answer the people in our areas. When they ask that question, what am I getting for this? We should be able to say, you're getting this, 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 and this. No, they're not getting municipal services to the same extent, but they should be able to see value for their taxes. And that's a challenge for us.
Now, just on our four electoral areas are totally different from each other. You know, we got Area D down there with Prairie Creek and Britannia Beach. Area C is very rural around Pemberton and lots of farming. And Area B is mostly agriculture, other than the Seton Portage area. And Area A is all in its own, up in the middle of nowhere. And one of the things I think we need to, when we do have that brainstorming session, is talk about what each area director is doing in each one of their areas. For me, it's all about natural resources. Mining, forestry, hydroelectric, and we got some tourism. And all those, the SLRD staff don't work on it. So the electoral area director has to take it all on. And because we don't have a staff member to work on this. That's not part of that's not what they do. It's all provincial. So who in the SLRD works on that stuff? So it's the electoral area director up in Area A that has to do that. I just had a session with a mining company to set up a Zoom meeting for Totten Lake and Gun Creek. We had it on Saturday. Went very well. You know, they presented their proposal on their drilling program and they got to ask the questions. That wasn't a task for a staff member. So it's something that I had to do. We've got a $600 million to $1 billion retrofit on the Joy Dam coming. We don't have a staff member to work on it. So who's going to work on it?
Do you not have a staff member because what you have asked for one and it's been turned down that your residents would pay for, or
It's not part of any of their jobs. So, you know, when I talked to the previous CAO, because I want to do a trust, try to get a trust out of BC Hydro. He says you know, once we get to that point, we may be able to do that. I've also tried to setting up a liaison committee, a community liaison committee with BC Hydro, and we may be able to get a staff member on that. But that was the previous CAO. So you can.
I just have a
Yeah.
follow-up question.
So I think
to that.
that's why it's important when we all get together is, you know, to talk about what each area director is actually doing. And when we talk about job descriptions, you almost need a separate one for each area director, because they're totally different.
Just to pick at that a little bit though, if you didn't do that, if you didn't set up that meeting with the mining and the next area A director comes in and that's not in their wheelhouse, what happens? Does the province then have to send in provincial staff or provincial
No,
help?
the way,
Or does it not get done?
The
Because
way-
if it's not in our
Yeah.
jurisdiction and you're not doing it, then it doesn't get done.
This is,
Then what
can I
happens?
explain how it happened?
Yeah, please.
The SLRD got a referral from the
From,
province.
okay,
The staff member sent it to me.
okay,
I had Zoom meeting with those two communities. We came up with a plan. The SRD sent the referral in, and part of it was that we wanted community meetings. And they came back and said, yes, we'll have community meetings. So the staff was never involved other than that referral process.
the SLRD staff.
The SLRD staff, yes, planning.
But my point is, if the SLRD is not working on it either our staff or our area director is not working on it? Does it just not happen?
Well, I could have said, fine, let it go. That referral says, yeah, just send it in, everything's okay. But I'm not like that. I gotta get
Okay.
community input.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand it, where it falls down.
That's the last thing you need is mining exploration, right, at Town Lake. I'd have my head chopped off.
Nikki,
Thank you. I just have a couple of points I wanted to go over, but I wanted to address that one first. And the question I think should be, should planning staff have undertaken that referral? Do you know what I mean? Like, why are things being referred to you to undertake work when you are not a staff member? Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying you're not valuable and you're not good at gathering all the information and connecting with your constituents, but I think there is an opportunity to have a conversation about that as well. Same with, I agree, you, Tony, right now, Director Rainbow, you're very agreeable to going and looking at sites. Is that really your role to go and do those things? Are we, I agree with the comment, are we properly funding and providing those resources for the electoral areas because we are remote, and I know it is easier. Just because something's easier doesn't mean that it's the right approach. And so I think a conversation around that, which I think stems into roles and responsibilities as well. But I think at this table, when there are discussions about roles and responsibilities, it's unfortunately going to be a little bit more high level. Understanding what your own responsibilities and roles are, as we've heard, going to be completely different in each area. So I don't, and I also think that, you know, it's great to have a brainstorming session, but it's also good for staff to be able to bring something to have a starter conversation, such as something like terms of reference, if that's something that we don't currently have, where then there's an opportunity to, instead of, there are some things that may not even be able to be addressed here, but let's start somewhere and then we can grow instead of going up here and going, oh, no, because who really wants to hear no? And it's not that it's no because of, it's not what we want to do. It's just because it's not the right place or there's something else. So I think that's something through the policy committee as well. Because I think where we came out of the last policy committee was there are a number of resolutions that were already put in, such as updating the procedure bylaw and then creating terms of reference for all of the committees. And, you know, I think there's some foundational work that we're lacking that's going to help inform all of these conversations. And then if you need to have a more in-depth conversation about it, absolutely. Not saying that there shouldn't be that, but I think it would be good to have something structured as well to be able to go in and have the conversations. What do I have here? I said that. Director Demare, I just wanted to mention, so in October, we did bring forward the strategic action items as well as the fuels and everything that we had been working on. Unfortunately, because we didn't have a carryover the next day, we didn't really get into it. We just received the report. So we've had a conversation at the staff level to say, like, this is really important work that we need to do in order to decide, are these, that we've met these actions, what's going to be moving over. We actually had a conversation about the fuel as well, because it's so long, and are all of these things really still urgent or material? And so I think a further conversation about that, we're already talking about it. So I'm just letting you know at this point that it's on the list and it's going to be coming to you guys. Because as much as you guys want to see what is happening with all of these, we are going, holy, there's a lot of items here. How are we going to achieve all of these items? So I think it's a meaningful conversation. It's something more committee of the whole-ish, not like, or maybe it comes here first, however that's going to work.
I think with the that action plan document spreadsheet, somehow we gotta put in the asset management stuff so that they're kind of combined, the critical ones that need to be done. Say in the first year, so that they're put into that document, because that's going to take a lot of time too, staff time.
Yeah, I think what's the whole philosophy on looking at the action plan, the one pager that right now that sets out the priorities, is to have realistically 1, 2, 3 goals, and this is for each department, which encompasses all areas, projects. And so they're identified there with 2 bullets underneath them, so that when one of these are completed, the next one comes up, and then there's a review of the backup list, and that sort of makes it on. Because even with that whole page, which is a lot for staff to undertake, we want to be able to check off some of those projects. And so those assets, once we get this all rolling up, they'll roll into projects that'll be reviewed on an annual basis. And they'll start filling in those spots, because realistically, there's still day-to-day stuff that isn't on that one pager that needs to happen. And Director Demary mentioned as well, I mean, yes, the wildfire was a huge, interruption of work. And we're going to continue to, unfortunately, I believe, see that. But I think we have some plans. We don't know how long it's going to go, but is there some way we're going to be able to have that, as we've been talking business as usual, to try to do some of these? Sometimes we're not going to, so that list is going to stay. And then I'm just going to finish off by maybe talking about my thoughts on, the interaction from a CAO perspective, and not understanding what is being expected of staff. And if the CAO doesn't know sort of the conversations and the direction that's coming from everyone, and then say, like, for example, I'd say, well, why haven't you finished these other projects? Well, I had to finish this and I got a comment on this, and it's very hard to be able to make sure that staff isn't overloaded and is able to achieve the tasks that have been put in front of them on that action sheet. So I think even just having the CAO copied, or having a conversation with the CAO and go, yeah, please reach out to so-and-so, just copy me so I know what's happening, allows, someone in this role to be able to support staff and be able to action the items that you guys need to be actioned. I think that's really critical. It's just from years of having that, it's really important just to be in the know on that particular item.
Tony.
I'm just getting a little conscious of Tracy's time, because I wondered how long we've got her for this morning. I wanted to say this, I don't think you, Tracy, should feel that this is in any way a waste of our time. No. This has been extremely valuable, spending the time talking about these in a general way, without working on something really specific, which is good. So
Thank you for that. I did recommend this at the board, and then I didn't want it to be perceived by this group as disrespectful of your time. It was entirely the opposite. It was entirely to, give this sort of EA voice. So thank you for saying that, because the intention was not to waste your time. It was to invest it, to make sure you're heard in these upcoming stages. And I know Chair Ford, this was important to her to make sure that this group had bluntly really receive the respect you deserve as we talk about governance as well. I'm good on time, but I think probably we've covered, I've made notes of some of these items, and I think this may well be a topic for this committee at another meet as it sort of rolls out. But, I'm here if there's anything else you think would be beneficial for me to hear, because the next stage is just to meet, waiting till your new CAO starts and sort of looking at the internal side of things. The policy list that was referenced by, your current CAO, and, figuring out what the next steps are to make this actionable. Again, very strong governance review. You're building off strength as a regional district, but in many ways, that's a really good time to make changes, because you're not broken. You're high functioning and wanting to be higher functioning. Is there anything else that this group thinks would be beneficial for me to hear right now?
Okay, anybody else?
I like the suggestion of the brainstorming session with us about respective roles and responsibilities, particularly in light of us asking for a higher rate of pay, because we are wildly different areas, different personalities, different populations, but that's our discussion to have. Thank you for that suggestion. Otherwise, no, I'm happy.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks. That was really good.
Thank you,
Thank
Tracy.
you,
Yeah,
Tracy.
good work.
Take care all. Bye-bye.
Yeah, so you're looking at Tracy.
Okay, motion.
You
to
all have
receive.
wonderful profiles as well, so there you go. Thank you. I'll drop off now. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
All in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we all sit looking at the screen when the person's talking and so what that person is seeing is the side of our heads. It's strange to be listening to somebody and looking at the owl.
Okay, can I, have somebody move the consent agenda, please?
Oh, I'll move that.
Okay,
Oh, wait a minute.
You putting something?
No.
okay.
Go ahead.
Moved and seconded, call a question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Business arising from the minutes, no, if there is any. Staff reports and other business, CAO verbal update.
Hello. So I have one, and that is with respect to the upcoming EAD meeting on March 13th. So we also have a schedule meeting in here for a joint regional atmospheric river EOC exercise. So we were wondering if the board, the committee would be agreeable to modifying the EAD meeting. And what were we, which day? March 12th.
Sure.
Which would be the Tuesday.
In March the 12th,
No, so that's a Tuesday.
Correct.
I have one stipulation if we do it on March the 12th, and that's you provide me with a birthday cake.
we can deal with
Oh, good.
I'll write that down.
I'm good with March the 12th, motion to have a March meeting on 12th birthday, on Tony's birthday.
I'll second that, yeah. That's the only party I'll get.
Okay, Tony, we got that covered.
Hey.
Anything else? Okay, well, I'll just throw something in here then. So today is Nikki's last official EAD meeting so far. So anyways, it's just, I enjoy working with you. It's like 25 years now, having fun. So it's wonderful. So you've done a great job as usual and look forward to seeing you tomorrow at the Peeps meeting.
Right.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, thank you very
Yeah.
much. I've really enjoyed working with you all, and thank you for being so welcoming and patient while I was getting up to speed on all of the activities in your areas and projects. And
That's what won't get me up to speed.
Excellent. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for all your work on the fire situation.
Okay, just a motion to receive that.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. 8.2, January 2024 Select Funds Report. And Suzanne is in the house. Right on.
We have to call in,
Very nice.
coming in virtually.
Oh,
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so this report is just the December Select Fund report. There are just a few things. Obviously, we're not quite finished our year end, so there might be a few items that will be adjusted to finalize 2023 in the next month or two. If you have any questions, Suzanne and I can answer them.
Yeah, Sal, go ahead.
Thank you. Just, I think I asked it before, but just to confirm, on general select, in 2022, we allocated $10,000 for the asset management planning program. Just curious, at the November meeting to the Community Growth Fund, we funded $100,000 for asset management program. Do we still need this $10,000?
Yes.
Yeah, this is for the UBCM grant, so it wasn't 100% grant, so this will offset the revenue portion that we got from UBCM for the asset management strategy implementation.
And the 100,000 from the Growing Community Fund?
That's for condition assessments.
That's just for condition assessment. Good, thank you.
Any other questions?
This reflects,
Perfect.
this reflects the money, our allocation for this year, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Am I reading that?
Off of this like funds for 2023, it'll be used this.
Let's see how much money I've got. Is my allocation for 2024 included in this?
This is just this up to December
Up to
2023,
December.
so
Ah,
and next month, 2024 will come with any new resolutions from this meeting and a revised 2023.
lovely. Thank you.
It's a very helpful report as usual.
Okay, everybody's good then?
I have no question.
That's my check.
No, it's okay. Thank you.
Okay, could I have somebody can move and second it? Call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried, thank you. 8.3 is the 2024-2028 draft electoral area budgets. So is that you, Suzanne, or Colin?
That'll be me.
Okay,
You can stick around if he wants to. Yeah, so this is the first draft of the EAD budgets for the committee's review. I'll first talk about the completed roll. So the 2024 completed roll from BC Assessments was received at the beginning of this month. And it shows an increase for all areas. The highest increase in assessments was Area C. It was a 9.53% increase, but Area B also close second at 9.49% increase. And overall, the first draft of the EAD budgets, the requisition has decreased so far. These are just the first drafts, however. And so their requisition was reduced by about 15.5% so far compared to 2022. Sorry, 23, to be mixed up in the middle. The salaries included in these budgets are estimated CPI increase of 4%. We don't know what that is yet. It should be released next week. It also includes 8% increase in benefits expenses, just as a contingency. When we did do the extended health and benefits review in August 2023, it was mentioned that most likely that we will see an increase in 2024 just due to the usage of medical plan actually. And the 2023 forecasted amounts shown in these budgets are not final and it will change. And we'll bring the adjusted budgets with 2023 forecasted amounts probably more accurate in February with the 5-year plan. This is just the 1-year 2024 plans for now. And we'll advertise that budget meeting to the public. I'll just go briefly through the budget. So civic addressing, we don't have any projects currently in the works for civic addressing. We're carrying forward the surplus and the reserve. And there was talk about the current area C and D civic addressing projects potentially coming under the service, but I don't believe it's the same type of service. when I looked at the bylaw for civic addressing, it mentioned that it has to be a regulatory building numbering service. So it's normally just like you build a database with new street numbers. So it's a little different from what the project currently is for area C and D, sorry, B and C, sorry. B and C.
So, excuse me, is that for the High Line Road, the addressing?
Thank you. I was just trying to catch up to it. Yes,
Okay,
So it's signage, right, for,
we agreed to fund, and I'm really happy that we're doing this project, that staff will actually get the signs and put them up with cooperation of the citizens and all of that. And I'm really glad we're doing that. I think it's a great emergency response measure. And I just thought, why doesn't that fall under civic addressing? And it is a specific project, but that's not under this budget. Is that correct?
the way I understand the project is it's not regulating the addressing, it's more of just adding emergency planning signage. Is that correct?
It's going to be actual street signs
Yep.
for
Yeah.
individual, all of the residences and properties in both of those areas. So a contract will be hired to install all of the street numbers.
Which is absolutely fantastic, but maybe this is a good example of where the language could be made a little more accurate, because I think a lot of people would think what we're doing with that project is civic addressing. And so maybe the name of this budget should be changed to reflect whatever it is that I don't really completely understand that you're saying is actually civic addressing.
So,
I mean, that's
So-
the adult, but
History of civic addressing and what we posted as expenses, it was hiring someone to build a database for new civic addresses.
okay.
So these civic addresses were already designated.
Established.
Right, it's just the signage is somehow missing.
so if I build 10 houses on the street, the first thing is for somebody to sit down with the database and say they're called number 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. And then the second part is somebody goes along and put the signs up.
Yeah, there wasn't any signage ever included. It was more just database work and actually surveying.
so it was up to the homeowner or the property owner to put the signs, put their address up.
Yeah.
Their numbered address.
Yeah.
And now it's part of the building permit that they have to do that in order to get that, I think.
Yes.
May I?
Yes, absolutely.
Director Birch Jones' project she's referring to is a special project that we're doing just for the residents of the High Line. I believe what Suzanne's referring to is the budget that we have assigning new civic addresses for development just in the course of regular business. So what Tony's describing is when we have a new development like in Wedgwoods or in Britannia, we have civic addressing as part of the building permit process because they get assigned a new address, or when someone builds a secondary suite, there's a new address assigned to that lot specific to that. So I think they're two separate things.
Should we change the name of it?
Yeah, yes, it's part of the civic, or the civic addressing bylaws, part of the buildings.
All right.
So,
In the, when I got down to the costs, you moved some funds, I think from reserve to a mapping program. Just curious on that mapping program. I know 911 is one upgrade to the new version where you can use GPS and so on and so forth. So just curious on what that mapping program is all about.
No, I just reviewed what was expensed. I don't actually have the information.
Okay. Because one of the things that happened during a fire, as everybody knows, we had, Gun Lake Fire was at the Gun Lake Fire. There was a group of people that stayed in Goldbridge and a group of people that stayed up in Raylord. They actually had to put signs up on a whole bunch of properties because nobody had signs. So they just took
so you're saying addresses,
address.
street address.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as part of the process. That some of them are still up, you know, they either did a cardboard or paper plates.
Do they last?
Hmm?
Do they last?
No, no, you need proper,
Need a new one.
Yeah.
Proper.
so that whole issue of this is critical during an emergency.
Absolutely. So,
So this was a pilot project, so I think that we're just looking to see the success.
the
of
one on the
it.
highlight,
Yes.
yeah,
And then, I'm assuming that will be reviewed by staff, and then whether or not it's successful, which I imagine it will be, there'll be additional requests or asks coming. forward.
Gallagher will be next.
well, I guess the point, we've talked about this numerous times. The TNRD, they have a program like, and I'm wondering, like, when you drive from Lillooet to Hat Creek, say, all those homes along there have the nice big, well, yellow signs, you know, a foot by 4 or 5 inches with their large black numbers at their driveway entrance.
Yep.
So that's a program that they did. Now, I think we've talked to them about this at some point, but we've never gone to the next step of actually providing those signs. What was it, like $25 a sign or something?
I don't remember the exact number.
It's reasonable.
The yellow and black signs you're referring to, that's a federal program, those are all on reserve.
That's, yeah, I was gonna say that, yeah.
And then there's
So
some
that's a
homeowners,
federal program.
yeah, and then there's some homeowners on Pavilion Lake that have paid out of pocket to have uniform civic addressing posted on blue signs with white lettering.
Yeah, so they paid for that themselves?
Yeah.
Okay, so like that federal program then on reserve lands, I think that's a really good program. I mean, being in that business for a long time, you get a call to some place and if you're lucky living here, say you know where that place is, you know the people. But when I worked in Richmond, you know, you were going around searching in the middle of the night for somebody's address who may not have even ever put one up. So that's super important to have that. And then in the rural areas, it's even more important because everything's so much further apart, right? I don't know if we need to look into that program once again. See what we can come up with. Maybe we can get a government grant to cover this now because of the fire situations, the emergency situations. So anyways.
So just final thought on that, the part of the staff research into Director Bruce Jones' initiative on the timeline was a program that was run by the regional district of Central Kootenay in the rural areas in and around Nelson, and civic addressing that they had done as part of the local government's initiative and their success in that program. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the area. You drive around, you can see everyone's civic address from anywhere you are. Part of the SOD's civic addressing bylaw is that in the building permit process as a subject of their final inspection and occupancy is that homeowners need to have their civic addresses posted visible from the road. And we have dimensions spelled out specifically within the bylaw of how that needs to be posted. So what we're doing on the High Line is our pilot project of uniform civic addressing to make sure that there's 100% homeowner buy-in so that we can, for exactly the purposes that you're referring to, Director Mack, about emergency response, being able to find addresses 24 hours a day throughout an emergency.
So what do we need to do to
Well, I think
move
we
that
should
forward?
maybe wait for the pilot project to be completed, and then there can be information
Go
from
from
there. Yeah, to sort of just complete that one, because it's already in the
Yeah,
queue and it's
yeah.
funded, and
And don't confuse the issue.
then
Yeah.
sort of continue on if
Okay.
that was successful. I'm sure it'll be good.
Sorry, Suzanne.
It's good conversation. So, yeah, no requisition for civic addressing, and we're just carrying forward the total reserve. It's only 15,000. In the 2024 budget, there's 20,000 available for any contracted services we want to use. The next budget is building inspection services. And, so this the revenue for 2023 did surpass the budget, so there is a surplus carrying forward of about 288,000. And it's mainly due to, the building permit fees surpassing budget by 178,000, and then also some savings in operational expenses of 109,000. We've budgeted the average of the last 5 years for building permit revenues, because it's an unknown how many inspections are gonna come, building permit fees are gonna be collected. And everything else is pretty standard in the budget. We carry forward some, budget for legal fees just in case, and everything else is pretty standard. Are there any questions about the building permit budget?
I wonder, thank you, thanks, Director Mack, I'm delighted that you're gonna charge less for the bit, that's great. I really support that decision, and I just thought, should we be charging less than that? I mean, is that your best guess for,
Me requisitioning.
yes? So it sort of that was sort of your best estimate, and I realize it's an estimate that was the maximum that we could reduce the fees by.
So yeah, the requisition in this case is a balancing factor. So I only requisition what we expect to need from taxes.
Right.
So that's still subject to change, unfortunately. So as we know more about the 2023 forecast, that surplus might change, and so that requisition will change as well. But for now, this is all we would require for 2024 in taxation.
That's great.
So,
I did note that the travel cost for 2023 were quite a bit lower than the previous years, and I presume that was all due to the wildfires in Area A and Area B. It was,
And also, I think we used to have a contract with Dawn there who posted most of the travel expenses, and so that's ended. And I don't think we have any other, and I noticed that the new, what's his name, the new one doesn't charge any travel time. Yes.
He lives in Pemberton.
So
He hasn't charged any travel expenses.
if I can offer an answer, Director Demare, in 2022, the Utilities Department purchased an additional vehicle that's more or less exclusive to the Planning and Development Services Department. So we don't charge travel anymore because we use an SRD vehicle almost exclusively for inspections. So that budget went up when the vehicle purchase, but would have been down in travel expenses that we bill.
there's still, so the fuel and
But not directly expensed by the building inspector.
where does it come from then?
The overhead charge, general government overhead charge.
Thank you.
Right, and then the next budget,
okay,
sorry, and the next budget is the elections and UBCM budget. The resolution is flat to last year. And it just covers the UBCM expenses and UBCM dues, and then a transfer to reserve for the next election cycle. Any questions on the UBCM elections? And the next service.
where is the UBCM this year?
In Vancouver again.
When's Whistler on the list?
Vancouver, Whistler, Vancouver. No, Victoria this time.
Oh,
It will never be in Prince George. They don't have the capacity. No other city in British Columbia can accommodate the number of rooms and the size of the convention. So it's only ever gonna be Vancouver, Whistler, or Victoria.
sorry, can't do it?
No one can.
Sorry?
Nope,
No?
no, they don't have hotel rooms. They have hotel rooms, but they don't have enough
Yeah.
hotel rooms within. It's all within walking distance of a convention center, and
Yeah,
Penticton was close, but they couldn't pull it together. The number of space, it's too bad.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Right, so the next budget is the emergency planning budget. So far, this 2024 requisition is reduced over the 2023 requisition by 14%. That's not final, it's just the first draft. There was some savings in the 2023 forecast, as well as some additional revenue. The time allocation from other services revenues has surpassed budget. And that was an estimate, and it's based on what the actual emergency planning staff are working on. So if they're working on the fire protection services, they charge to those services, and the 911 services, they charge out to those services as well. There's placeholders for additional grants that we will be applying for throughout the year. And there's also the placeholder for AMBC tasks, emergency management tasks. Yeah, nothing other of note, but I'll take any questions on the emergency planning budget.
Question, so with this Fire Smart, is it ever gonna get to the point where there's just X number of dollars funded to each location throughout the province for doing fire smarting, or do you have to continue applying for a grant?
That's a good question. I haven't heard of any change.
Because they, like, applying for these grants takes time and effort and money, obviously. And you would think with the situation that we're in and gonna be in for a while, they would just allot X number of dollars to each area throughout the province to go and get your fire smarting done.
Yes.
And now they keep saying we've got the wildfire service are on like 24/7 full year employment. So all those folks in that department could be out and about when they're not fighting fires or doing floods or whatever. They should be, like say the Pemberton Fire Base, they could work within this corridor doing fire smarting at people's properties, right? Yeah, there just should be a better plan here. I watched the guy that's in charge of the BC Wildfire Service giving his rendition of how things went last year, and he's anyways, he didn't leave me fully feeling good about it all, but yeah, there's just too much politics involved.
Yeah, on that topic of they can only work on Crown land. And on the Crown land, I know going back a number of years now, I tried to get them to fuel mitigate all the Crown lots around Goldbridge. And it's gonna happen now through that fuel mitigation program. They had to go to the Ministry of Forests to be able to do that. So the way they got around it is through these fuel mitigation projects through Cascades Forest District. But they actually go up and they work on Sunshine Mountain in the spring for training. And anything that you want, a nonprofit organization like trails and stuff, they'll work on them. But they have to have that section 57 and 56 to be able to do that, the trail organization.
Well, I think we
They
just
can't-
need
they
to
can't
make
work
it.
on, they can't work on private property, so a lot of that funding that you're seeing is for that private property stuff.
There just needs to be a better system of getting that funding out and allowing these people who are paid employees of the taxpayers of this province to be able to go and fire smart wherever they need to fire smart, right? And there shouldn't be all this like bureaucracy,
That's exactly what that is. That's a typical bureaucratic response. No.
Yeah,
And that we should be looking at changing that.
yeah.
So the potential would be for us to put forward a resolution to the Lower Mainland Local Government Association, asking the province to allocate funds to each community based on size and population, et cetera. But then as a local government, we would also then, if we got that money, we'd have to be prepared to find either community groups or some association that will then do that work. And some communities won't have those resources to do that fire smarting, which is why it's application based. And the grants should be easier to apply for, but they're not necessarily. And so I think the challenge becomes, if they sent boxes of money to each community, are you prepared to use it in the way that it's meant to be used? And will it make the difference? Like, I think there's challenges on both sides. I think there's some benefits to having an application base, because then it says we as a local government are prepared to take on this work, or to help resource community groups to take on this work. So
You know as well as I do, bureaucracy gets in the way of itself. I mean, look at, and you get personalities involved and all this kind of stuff. Look at with search and rescue,
Yeah.
what's going on with those folks. I mean, they do such an amazing job as volunteers. And there's somebody in an office in Victoria who makes stupid decisions to hinder their being able to go do their job. You know, when you have people who are very dedicated, having to write a letter to the premier saying, you better get involved here. Like, but when that's not the only department in government that acts that way, you know, so there needs to be a complete rethink of a lot of this stuff. Get back to common sense and just do your damn job. No personal stuff involved. Thank you.
And I think
Yeah.
that I agree with you, if we could expedite the fire smarting any way we can. And yeah, we have BC Wildfire and our fire departments, and we have a lot of people on the ground that know what needs to be done in their respective communities. And like you say, there's more staff and year-round people who have the capability to do some of those jobs. If we could move that along, we are in a drought still. It's just gonna be the same next year. There's no reason to think it'll be
I
different.
mean, we've got so many First Nations groups throughout the province that are well equipped and well, they know what to do. All the logging folks
Yeah.
that, you know, could be doing stuff when they're not in the logging business. There's
So I
there's
think
so
we
much
have-
resources out there.
I think too, there's sort of two, there's your, I'm gonna say the wrong word, it used to be your community wildfire protection plan, which would be more on the crown land, which you're
Mhm.
getting your BA Blackwells or other
Yeah.
consultants to come in, and that's where you would use your loggers and, you know, First Nation firefighters, which I agree their program's developing. And then you have the Fire Smart, and I think the one thing about saying, give us funds, is that how do you allocate that? You're in an urban area. Do you have a lot of, you know, on private property? Or are you backing into the forest we definitely see we need some help, because we are in all of our areas right in the forest, right? And that's key to be able to do your private property fire protection. So I'm not sure how they would allocate that. You think your growing community is okay, you could kind of do what you're expecting is growth. You have some data and statistics on that, but it may put us at a disadvantage. For us, it may not give us enough funds to be able to hire, because we're hiring right now 2 Fire Smart coordinator and I think a contractor to be able to support fire smarting in our areas. And I think they don't seem to say no to our applications right now, which I think is good.
No, probably because of the last 2 or 3 fire seasons have been rather dramatic,
For sure.
and it wouldn't be a good PR event for them to say no. So,
Agree.
You take a look at the cost of this year's fires in BC. About $850 million. Almost $1 billion. They know how much money could they spend on fuel mitigating around communities, like right around.
well, like you know, Sal, I keep saying, when the fire starts, like these lightning strikes, put the damn thing out immediately. Don't stand around and watch it for a week and then let the wind come up and blow it all over the countryside. Put them out. Go one at a time and put them out. In the end, I guarantee you that will save you a lot of money, concentrate on putting them out. You know, like I keep saying, I was always taught you keep it to the area or, you know, room of origin, and that's in a house fire, but it's no different when you have a lightning strike on the top of the mountain, like those ones at your place or Casper Creek or, you know, Boulder Creek. I mean, you can go on and on and on. If they were dealt with immediately, put the resources to them immediately, put them out, it's over and done with. And then it's way safer for your firefighters in the end, because you're not fighting something that only Mother Nature will put out. So, but I don't know how to get that message across to these people, because it's like talking to the wall. It's like they don't, well, in fact, the forest minister, Mr. Thompson at the time, told me, oh, Russell, we don't fight fires anymore. We manage them. My response was, tell me how you manage a fire, please. I'd really like to know. I mean, this is quite interesting. But anyways, it just costs us more and more money all the time.
Sorry, Suzanne.
No worries. And the last.
How much more money have you got?
The last,
The last point I want to make about the emergency planning budget is, you know, the reserve is a little low. So there is an option to increase the taxation to fund the reserve, but I suggest you wait till next month's draft budget to look at that again.
yes.
Yeah, this is still a preliminary budget, so that conversation about the bill funds that I did, we'll wait till the next version of it.
And then the flood services budgets are included, but they basically show a complete spend of the available revenue each year. So you see your estimated total spend for the year in the expenses under 551,000. And then the electoral area community park service, it's the 3,000 cost center. That's now completed, and I just wanted to show you the final budget for this, and it's zero all across the board for 2024 because we sent back the requisition funds and the reserve funds to the community. And that's all for the budget for 2024. So I can take any final comments, questions.
I got one question, I guess, is the gas tax, bill funding, you know, we get the report. When's the next one gonna be coming out?
Yes, oh, the reserve, just the, yeah, we can have that for you in February.
Okay, thank you.
Suzanne, in the, like the Divine Transfer Station, we get the metal bins, which I've been paying for with amenity funds, select funds, whatever. But like that's turned into an extremely popular event. Like the amount, well, in fact, we're waiting for another bin there now. The amount of metal that's sitting there piled up waiting to go. We need to get it on a more rotational basis so that we don't end up with the bin being over full, not picked up. Then they put another pile beside the bin. When the new bin comes, now it's got to be double handled. So I'd like to figure out now on those bins were around $750, I believe. And no, yeah, $750 say. And we were getting around 500 and change per bin when it goes back in for the metal. So they're costing us about, say, $250 per bin. So if we could figure out that we would have a minimum of one bin a month, you know, figure it out, it's like 25, so it's $3,000 that it would cost either Area C or the taxpayers. I don't know how we need to discuss how we want to do that, but I think it, like I say, I think it's just a very, very beneficial way of keeping the community as clean as possible. Because otherwise, if we don't have them, that stuff ends up getting dumped over the edge of a logging road somewhere. Yes.
Do you want me to raise that with,
Omar?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
and then perhaps you guys can have a conversation and then
Yeah,
update this. for
Funding,
next-
like, yeah,
So that it's covered.
yeah,
So needed.
because like I say, I think that's just a very valuable deal. Thank you. Any other questions from anybody? Everybody's good?
Will I move in receipt?
Yes, please.
Yep, just done.
Seconded? Okay, moved and seconded, call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Suzanne. Trying to get this thing.
Are we just receiving the next report as well? I couldn't see that there was anything for us to resolve on. I'll move receipt of that.
Yeah. So that was moved and seconded. Yeah, call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you. So the next thing is 8.4. Is it 8.4? That one's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. 8.5, request for decision. Building bylaw number 1611-2020. Amendment bylaw number 1838-2024. Jay.
Thank you. Present today, amendment to the building bylaw for two reasons. The first, to realign the language in the bylaw related to farm status buildings. The old language in our existing bylaw states the definition of a farm status building as a building less than 800 meters square in building area. The BC building code stipulates that buildings larger than 600 meters squared leave part 9 of the BC building code and thus require professional oversight. Engineers for structural design and every other component therein. So 800 meters, in our opinion, was an error of size. 600 meters squared being roughly a 6,200 square foot agricultural building. I don't think anyone in the SORD is exceeding that size of agricultural buildings or farm status buildings related in the definition. So we propose to amend the bylaw to align with the BC building code in that manner. And our second revision was a fee adjustment for building permit fees for those folks particularly affected by the 2023 wildfire season, and a reduction in building permit fees to assist them in the rebuilding process, and have this into the bylaw as a permanent affectation for those folks impacted by states of local emergency or provincial states of emergency moving forward in the event of natural disasters. Any questions? Happy to.
I really support the recommendations, but I did wonder when I saw. Okay, so the fellows had the house burned down and they're gonna build something now and you're gonna give them a 30% reduction in the permit fee. How much of a bureaucratic exercise is that gonna be for the builder? Like, how much are they going to have to prove to get that 30% reduction?
Very little. We have all the statistics and civic addressing from every building and structure that we lost through the wildfire season and in perpetuity.
So you would know that, so there wouldn't be any requirement or burden of proof on the property owner. So this is fairly straightforward.
Quite, yeah. And using from our damage assessment reports throughout the summer and fall, we have all of these addresses and parcel identification numbers, so we know exactly where these are.
Good, excellent.
So
I propose an amendment to 3 years. Knowing
Yeah,
that a lot of the specifically at Gun Lake, that the property owners are non-resident property owners. Gonna make them a little bit more difficult to get all their, building permits and everything ready to go in that 2-year period. It's gonna be a push for them. So I'd rather see it 3 years than 2 years.
The 2-year timeframe was mirroring that of other regional districts in the same position who have previously passed this bylaw. There's also a stipulation that it has to be the homeowners that were affected. So properties changing hands, the newer homeowners would not be
I'm good with that,
recipients of that.
but I think it should be 3 years.
John?
If you could just clarify that, does that mean they have to make the application for a building permit within 2 years?
The application, yes.
Well,
That's all the planning and everything. In other words, all their drawings, everything that they're gonna do.
you're either gonna do it or you're not, surely.
You gotta remember that some of those properties were third generation properties. So what they had on there was minimal. If you looked at their property taxes before, you'd see that the land is worth this much and the buildings are worth this much. So for them to move forward, they're gonna, what are they gonna build? All those decisions that they're gonna have to make moving forward. And in 2 years, I'd rather give them 3 years so that they make the right decisions that they need to make.
The timeframe here as well was also meant as an incentive. So to incentivize people to move on with the process to rebuild the entire community as a whole.
I'm still for 3 years. If it
I
goes. to the
think
board-
if you extend it to 3 years, then we'll have people asking, can we have an extension to 4 years? I think if you're really serious about doing it, you're gonna get it done. And if the incentive is that I get a 30% reduction in my fee, I'm maybe gonna move a little quicker than.
The full-time property owners, yes, they're on it already. But on the
Second home.
and that's only 5 out of the 56.
Yeah.
So I don't wanna say, okay, full-time property owners, you gotta do it in 2 years, and then non-resident property owners, you do it in 3 years. I think we just 3 years across. It doesn't mean that those other districts are, I've looked at this, but those are my viewpoints.
Just my question is, so these people that lost their structures and they were built, within 50 feet of the lake shore. Now, are they gonna be allowed to put their building back where it was? Or do they have to now meet the new standards for how close you can be to the lake and all that kind of stuff? Can they build where they were?
Sorry, Director Mackey, you just hit a magic number in your question. Because if it were 50 feet and where that 15 meters from the high water mark of fish-bearing stream or water body, then the answer is very possibly yes. Closer than that, it's doubtful. In 2016, the province introduced the riparian area protection regulation, which limits how close we can develop to high fish-bearing streams, water bodies, etc. Any new development within the SPIA or the environmental protection area, I don't remember what the acronym stands for, is limited to the setback is 30 meters unless homeowners would go through the motions of engaging with a qualified environmental professional to file with the province and with the SRD for a riparian development permit to allow them to decrease that setback from 30 meters to 15 meters. So anyone
So I guess
close
what
to
I'm trying to get at in a polite way is, here we go with more bureaucracy for a person to replace what was burnt down in a natural disaster that they had nothing to do with. And some of those properties, I'm sure, with the way the landscape and everything is, where the building was situated may have been the best place for the building to be, right? So I worry that some of these people are gonna come forward and they're gonna run into a roadblock. And somebody's gonna say, oh, no, you can't build there, you gotta build up over there. And that's gonna cause either they won't build, or won't be able to build, or the price will be, out of sight. Yeah, I can just see challenges being made.
And we have had those conversations during our phone calls with the individuals who were impacted by having a loss on their property, because they're all majority are waterfront. Unfortunately, it's outside of the SLRD's control.
Yeah.
This isn't our regulation, and we have.
But can we not lobby on their behalf if this becomes an issue?
We're waiting for other things that we've been asking for as well, which is taking a
Yeah.
considerable amount of time, which could help in all wildfire loss situations, and that is not moving as quickly as we'd like either. They're very particular in protecting the environment, and they are not really willing to budge on any variation to those regulations.
Director Mack, if I may carry on with that, I won't lie in that it will be a challenge for a select few homeowners where they are squeezed in by the watermark and specifically Stafford Road. Being a building professional and having the skills and expertise that I do have, that it is possible for all of these people to rebuild on their lots. So they're not without challenges, but the possibility is there. We're gonna have the new environmental protections and regulations are gonna have to be adhered to just as we've moved on since the original buildings of these homes 50, 70, 80 years ago. But it's still, the possibility does exist for these folks to rebuild and enjoy their properties, however, further back from the water, to protect the environment, the drinking water.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's a good reason for the extra year that Director the Mayor is asking for, because first of all, they're in a complete state of shock after losing all of these things, and now they're gonna have to look at something completely different from what they had before based on the new regulations.
Yeah, it might take a year, just to
Why not?
get a plan in place to move forward, so. You're moving his
That we
request?
seconding Sal's suggestion that it be for 3 years.
It's just to go to this has to go to the board, right?
We're changing
So
the-
would you like the amendment at the board meeting?
We could recommend
Because
that.
this would.
Well, personally, I would make it here and move it forward to the board.
So we don't need to have this conversation over again at the board.
Okay, so I'll make the amendment that it's changed to 3 years.
Seconded. Okay. Call the question, all in favor? Opposed, motion carried.
So we will move the amended motion then? Yeah,
A motion to send it with amendment to the board?
Yeah, wouldn't that go automatic?
Yeah, now it's just a motion to move the recommendation forward to the board.
Yeah.
So
As it's currently.
Okay, moved and seconded.
Yes.
options, hold on a minute. So what? I'm just looking at the options of the.
Yeah. So it says give first, second, and third reading to bylaw number, adopt. So,
So what we are doing, we're recommending to the board option number 1.
yes,
Okay.
correct? Okay. Moved and seconded, call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried.
Very good.
Okay, and now we need to, no, option 1, we did first, second, third reading, and we adopted it, correct?
Was
So
recommending.
we recommend.
Recommending to the board.
Yeah.
Okay, very good, thank you. Thanks, Jay. Now we go to 8.6. I was gonna ask, is lunch here or no?
It's funny you should say that.
12:30 exactly.
Do we maybe want to, yes, if we could just
Pardon me?
finalize this out. So that they can finish it up next week,
Okay,
Okay,
at least the next meeting.
so which one we on now? 8.6?
so 8.6 is notice on titled construction contrary to building bylaw regulations. Stefano, area C. Okay,
Yeah. Subject property, building permit was issued in 2018 for a single family dwelling with a suite in Wedgewoods. The construction was slow, inspections were performed. The building permit was extended after the first after the first expiry date in 2020 until July 16, 2022. The homeowners who are also the builders were contacted, made aware of their building permit expiry, that they needed to that they needed to reapply, as the SRD's building bylaw only allows at the time for one extension. The last building inspection and site meeting with the builders was on May 10th. Building permit has expired. Correspondence has been sent to the homeowners with no response, and now the property is currently listed for sale with just a foundation. Staff recommend a section 57 notice on title.
okay, so your option 1 is your preferred option. File a section 57 community charter notice in the land title office with respect to this property. That's your preferred option?
Yes.
Okay, I'll move that.
Second.
Second it. Call the question. All in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, request for decision. Yeah, electoral area B, development variance permit. PVP 176. Nana, how are you? Okay, do you want to tell us what's going on with this one?
Yeah, good afternoon, directors. So this is a variance application regarding an interior line setback variance on a residential property in electoral area B. So this particular lot is relatively narrow and has topographic constraints that, in addition to the location of other existing structures, limits the buildable area. And so the applicant is requesting that the 1.5 meter interior side setback is reduced from 1.5 meters to 1 meters to accommodate the construction of a new garage. And so notifications have been sent out to the neighbors within 50 meters of the subject property, and we have not received any feedback at this time. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Any questions, anybody? Sounds pretty.
You answered all the questions in this little report, so I move it.
Okay, you'll second it. Thank you very much, Anna. So moved and seconded, call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much. So we'll leave it at there, have lunch.
Reasons.
Okay, so we'll recess for half an hour. Okay, right? Okay, call this meeting back to order. And we are on 9.1. Misty's Lane, Paradise Valley, Director Rainbow.
Yeah, I'm looking for $10,000 from our amenities fund to pay for an upgrade to this Misty's Lane. Now, Misty's, it's a strange situation. We've got the BC Hydro right away from the bridge through to the start of the Sea to Sky Trail. And we know that the discussions we've had about that and ownership of that road and maintenance of it and so on and so forth. Misty's Lane comes off the end of that road, off to the left, services 3 or 4 homes, and is who knows what it is? It's nobody's driveway. On an old map, it was listed as an MOTI road, but MOTI disavow any knowledge of that. So anyway, the people in that, and typically what we've done, we've used the cost center that's out there to pay for grading for the right of way. We've never touched Misty's Lane, and yet the people there are paying for it. They're part of that cost center. So, and this is a good case study of who does what, because Misty's Lane people phoned me and they phoned Ed, and then Ed phoned me and we got talking about it, and then he got hold of Miller Cap to get it organized, and so he's done sort of that side of it, and now I'm looking for the money to pay for it. So our my long-term, but our long-term goal remains to get Modi to take over that whole road. But it was just the hole down there, you could almost lose a car in it. It was rather, you could almost swim in it. It was a big hole. So anyway, there you go.
Very good.
No pressure, but the work's already been done.
So you're gonna move it?
I think that's second.
Vivian's gonna
Yeah.
second it?
Yeah.
Okay, call the question. All in favor, opposed, motion carried.
That has to go to the board though, doesn't it?
Yeah, because it's amenity fund.
This is one that
Yeah.
has to go to the board. So, yeah, recommended to the SRD board that money be spent. And the work be done as soon as possible. That's now.
Good that you've got it done.
Well, they're very happy.
9.2,
They're very happy.
Public
Yes.
Transportation Service in Lillooet, notice of closure, Director Birch Jones.
And, you know, since I submitted this for the agenda, Owl Bus has had a little bit of interest from a couple of tentative service providers, so there's a faint hope that we might be able to carry on the service, but in the meantime, this particular driver and operator, Jill Stainsby, who's done heroic work over the years, is notifying us that the service is over, and it is really a sad note. I would like this to go to the board, partly because it is an important transit link in our region, and just to keep the northern portion of the SLRD in mind in terms of transit for the future. So, yeah, just to receive it and send it on to the board meeting.
I think we should word that in more strongly.
Okay?
Picking up on what you said earlier about regional transit, Sea to Sky transit, that we should ask the board to consider this little service as part of regional transit, and that the regional transit committee would take it on. And rather than it being you or
Jill.
or whoever coming to the board and asking for approval of select funds or this or that to support it. Let's sort of take it to the board now and say this should be part of regional transit. If we get a Sea to Sky thing, we need a link from Lillooet to the Sea to Sky. So that would be my resolution, or a resolution that I would like to see.
I agree. How do we do that?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what the proper process, I'm assuming that would likely be referred to staff to understand how that could be incorporated in. The regional transit committee, like if it's going that way, has been defined as all of those areas and First Nations within this Sea to Sky corridor.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it would be able to fit into that particular, like it's not gonna just easily be able to put in there, but
No.
it's not for consideration. It could be, or there could be another mechanism. The regional transit funds we have right now, is that, do you know who all contributes to that? Is that? Have to look.
So can we craft a resolution which just suggests that be considered and it. I think it's important. I remember being in one of those regional transit meetings and using the word Lillooet and being told that's not part of us and should be.
So,
I'm positive, if we look back at the strategic planning we did, when we're up in the complex here,
Center.
we talked about all this.
Mhm.
And I'm sure there was something there about area A and area B. As part of this regional transit.
However, it was also part of the optimistic future. I think we did agree
Well, we
that
need to look
really
back
big
at that
demand was
And look at the documentation on it as part of this.
Edmonton
Because,
South.
yeah,
I think you might want to refer it to staff.
Yes.
So that staff could do a little bit of work on it and then maybe bring it back here, have a conversation, and then at that point it could go up to the board, just so that you guys are aware where the conversation
Yeah.
has been had and what that looks like, where the funding, who's currently contributes to the funding. I just think there's a few things that we don't know
Sure.
right now. And that could just help inform that conversation and that elevation towards the board.
That's why we need someone sitting in that chair. Thank you.
Yes.
Nikki, that's
That-
exactly what I was trying to say.
well done, George.
the other piece of it is NDIT was doing a study. I don't know if you filled out that study.
I sure did.
Yeah, because there was funding available through
Mhm.
NDIT on little companies like that.
Yeah, so we may be complicating that there may be a downside to pulling it into an SR.
But, you know, but we never got anything, so
No, we didn't.
we didn't get anything
Did you apply for funds?
out of the NDIT
We
funding
did,
for
it just wasn't successful.
local transportation.
Okay, so we're gonna refer it to staff.
Do we want to receive this letter first and
Yeah.
then make a second resolution to refer the conversation about the Northern Transit being sort of part of the
The discussion.
discussion on regional transit, and that staff bring forward the information back to a future EAD meeting?
Sure,
Okay,
that would be
so-
fantastic.
I'll second that motion.
So this is moved and seconded. And then I'll call a question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. And then we have another resolution to say that we're going to have staff research previous discussions about the transit service in the north. A and
Well,
B,
let's
or-
bring back a report to the EAD regarding regional transit. For transit throughout the region.
but
The electoral area.
see, the problem with, we have to be more specific in that because 90% of the work that's been done, 99% is the south part of it. So we need to include A and B in this specifically,
Well-
right?
I think to consider how transit in areas A and B could be included or incorporated into
Yeah,
regional
yeah, yeah.
transit.
Yeah.
And previous discussions on the matter.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I hope, yeah, sure, I'll move that.
Sal's gonna second it. Call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried.
And if I could just comment beyond that,
Yeah.
that when I read this letter, I thought, boy, this is really important because once that, if that were allowed to just go, then to start it up again from nothing would be really difficult.
Yeah,
So I think we should support our colleagues in the north, however we want to express that, to help them find a way of keeping this going. And if it requires a little bit of funding, then we maybe find a way to help with that.
Well, at least if this is not forgotten, when we're talking about regional transit, I'd be happy with that. The advantage that Owl Bus has currently is that a lot of their funding is coming through the Friendship Center. So that's like a whole different pot of money that the SLRD wouldn't be able to access, so. And also with these couple of other potential drivers and some other interests that I'm just seeing some glimmers of, maybe by the next meeting, we'll have more surety on that. But this service as it is won't be continuing, and I am sorry, because it has been a very valuable service, and Area B certainly supported it in the past. There it is.
So we support you in your efforts.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so we're all good with that. It was moved, seconded, passed, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so 9.3, ICBC Business Insurance Reimbursement Director Rainbow.
Yes, well, after a conversation with Nikki and with Annie, I had to renew my insurance. Short story, I had to renew my insurance in December. And when I got talking to the guy, he was asking me, "Are you sure pleasure insurance is enough?" I said, "Yeah, I only go to 3 or 4 meetings a month." And then he said, "Yeah, but what about when you just go to Britannia Beach?" So, no, we got talking about that. He said, "That's way more than pleasure use. And if you get into a serious accident, you could be uninsured, basically." So that cost me an extra $448. So then I got thinking, well, the only reason I'm spending $448 is because I'm a director. If I wasn't doing this job, I wouldn't have to pay money. So therefore, I think I should be able to claim it. So I did. Just to get the ball moving, I stuck it on my December claim. And of course, Annie goes, not in our policy, and Nikki confirmed that. So now it's come to you, and I'm not sure what the 3 of you do with regards to your automobile insurance. But here we are. So
I got a few comments on it. This isn't work, right? What we do is not work.
I get paid for it.
It's still not
I'm
work.
undercut. Not the
Like,
way.
I don't know what the ramifications are. Like, I don't have work safe. I don't have commercial general liability insurance. If it was work, I'd have those, which I've had in the past when I did a little bit of consulting. And I had all that, and I had work insurance on my vehicle. But this doesn't work.
What is it then?
I don't know. That's why I think this should go to legal counsel. And see what we actually are, because I drive 2 vehicles.
Yeah, I was just thinking that too.
Right? I can drive one or I drive the other one. It doesn't really matter which one I take. They're both pleasure use. Right, so do I have to insure both vehicles or only drive one for business? So I would really like to know what legally we are when it comes to something like this, like that ICBC insurance.
I wasn't prepared to take the risk based on the advice I got from this insurance broker. So and he considers I've been risking it for the last 8 years.
Yeah, but I mean,
So-
it's
so-
guys.
Yeah, maybe that's all wrong. So
Well,
I
you know
agree with
what?
reimbursing you for this amount because you spent it, but I don't agree with all of us jumping on.
Well, you know what, Vivian?
Paying this extra insurance.
I think we should look into it because with ICBC now, with their no-fault insurance, every day on the news, you see somebody's getting stiffed with their new policies. I mean, you can get injured beyond belief, and they give you $25 a week or some stupid thing. So we don't want to put any, and the road conditions that we have at this time of the year, you could get into an accident where you ended up just going off the road. So I think it might be a good idea just to get advice on this. And if they come back and say, no, it's not necessary, fine and dandy.
Yeah.
We've got it in writing and that's it. But if they do come back and say, yeah, that's a valid concern, then we need to go forward with them. I mean, I drive every day and like you, I have 2 vehicles. You're coming and going all the time. So yeah, I'd like to know too.
We could refer to our casual legal services.
Yeah.
At that point, there really isn't a fee involved. At this point, if we go over a certain amount of time, then there will be a fee involved, but this is, I think, a relatively general question
Yeah.
that they should be able to assist us with. So we could do that. The other thing I wanted to flag is that, just we've had a couple of conversations since we originally talked about this. And so the potential, so all staff use their vehicles for work and they don't get reimbursed for that as either. It's part of, it's not a factor in determining
Yeah.
remuneration or salaries, which I know our salaries are more than what you are getting. This is our work. But there is no eligible expense for reclaiming those fees either.
Yeah,
That's good
when
to know.
I was teaching, to drive to school and back, no, you don't, that's not business.
Right.
That journey is not considered to be. So it may well be
We're
that
getting
somebody
to our
will come back and
workplace.
say, no, you don't need to buy business insurance. So I'd be happy to defer this until after we've had some legal advice. And if it comes back and says we don't need it, I've got it this year, what the heck, it's not gonna hurt me.
We could get a motion to refer this to casual legal services and bring back to.
I'll move that.
Second.
Yeah.
Okay. Moved in second and call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
And so then I would move that this report be deferred
Deferred.
until we have a response from
Okay,
our.
moved. Seconded. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay.
Good, thank you very much.
Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, well.
Okay, correspondence for action, request for funding, Lillooet Soccer Association 2024 association fees.
New group, working in coordination with existing groups, but they're their own society and they want to do a lot more in terms of kids soccer without all the travel, which I really support, and make it available to more children in Lillooet. So a motion for $5,000 from electoral area B select funds towards the Lillooet Soccer Association.
Okay, obviously you're gonna move that.
Yep.
I'll second it. No, Tony will second it. He's the soccer man. So. Very
I
good.
prefer it to be Lillooet Association football, but
Yeah.
soccer will be fun.
We're in North America now, Tony.
I know, yeah.
You gotta relinquish something.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
moved and seconded. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. 10.2. Request for funding Royal Canadian Legion Branch 201 Pemberton, purchase of chairs for lounge. So what they want to do is buy all new furniture, well, new chairs there. They're actually worse than these. No offense. That's something we're gonna have to work on too, folks. New chairs for this room. Anyways, I will move this. And it'll come from Area C Select Funds. Okay, so moved, second. Okay, moved to second and call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And decision on late business. I don't believe we have any. Late business? No.
Oh, that's mine.
Director's notice of motion, none. Tony.
Can I move adjournment, please? Yes, I can. I move that the meeting be adjourned.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Don't second it.
You got it.
I actually don't think.
Moved and seconded, call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. So now we can adjourn officially.
But I thought